Why do we look toward that which is dead to confirm that we have life? Let's begin there. This external world is, quite literally, dead, as in it is illusory. It is Maya. It doesn't exist. It's not real in the sense that it purports or presents itself to be. So why would we look at something that isn't real and attempt to define it as not only being real and having meaning associated with that reality, but as having a level of power over us, as having almost control over who we are, who we say we are? The dead cannot define the living. It is only the living that give meaning to the dead. And when you constantly give meaning to the dead like that, you are taking away from your own life. To look at something that has died and ascribe the life that you have onto that. But it is dead. The external world is dead. It cannot provide meaning of its own accord. It cannot provide fulfillment of its own accord. It cannot provide any substantive emotion or characteristic or anything of the sort of its own accord because it does not exist. And according to that level of non existence, it has no life, vitality, vigor, anything of the sort associated with it. How can that which is dead define that which is alive? Why would the dead give meaning to the living? It cannot give meaning to the living because it is dead. It is the living. It is the living that actively seeks to give away its own power, inner power of essence, of existence, of awareness, of consciousness, to a world that can only be defined by the observer. Think about that. To a world in all of its glory, in its vast and incomparable, infinitesimal entirety. I did say that correctly. To give meaning to it where there is no meaning to be found. And not only to give meaning to it, but to let that illusion, that Maya, define you. What does that say about you? What does that say about where you are at? What does that say about who you are? Do you know who you are? You're letting something that doesn't even exist tell you who you are. You're letting something that isn't real define who you are. You're letting something that is dead claim rights over a living soul, which is what you are. Perhaps you should ask yourself that question. It is easy to talk about this in a matter of fact sort of way and really get down to the nuts and bolts of the matter. But when you're entrenched in this sensory overload of representation, it can seem that it is nothing but lack. It is nothing but problems. It is nothing but being defined by that. By looking at it, what is outside of me? Oh this, oh this. Why can't I have this? Why don't I have that? I have to go here. I have to go there. I have to do this. I have to do that, etc., 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 etc. ad infinitum. That is the spell. That is how powerful the illusion is. We have been conditioned and, quite frankly, hypnotized into since our birth and childhood. We no longer see with eyes that were meant for seeing. We do not hear with ears that are meant for hearing. Our minds, once perfectly lucid, believe it or not, perfectly lucid and pure, as are the youngest children, who are natural inheritors of the kingdom of heaven, now transfixed by a almost permanent cloud that plagues our understanding, not only of our place in the world, but of who we even are and of what this world even is. The dead cannot give meaning to the living. It is the living that give meaning to the dead. Therefore, it is not the external we should be focused on. It is the internal, our mind's eye, that we need to keep in the center of our purview. And we need to examine what we are really seeing when we look at that. What really constitutes the field of vision in this eye? What does it represent for ourselves, for our subconscious? What meaning does it have for us? And why, after so long being asleep to ourselves, does the continued spell of this illusory operating system known as the external world seek to destroy any and all progress we can make from our own place of understanding? I don't believe it is a deliberate attempt to destroy progress. Rather, it is the persistence of the illusion itself. That is how powerful it is. That is how inundated and ingrained it has become within us. Any attempts at its opposite, any attempts at anything that isn't related to it, that doesn't perpetuate it, that does not strengthen it, would be interpreted as being destructive toward it. And so it has to assert itself because it wants to live. It wants to survive. Like a parasite. A parasite wants to live. A parasite wants to survive. It's not personal. It is not personal. But that doesn't change the fact of what is happening to you as that parasite feeds off of you, since you are its host. It does not change the fact that you are being siphoned. Energy is being drained because you seek to look at something. And I'm preaching to myself as much as anybody here. You seek to look at something that in no way can understand you, define you, value you, devalue you, put you up, put you down, put you all around, however way you want to look at it. It cannot do it unless you willingly cede your own inner essence and power and let the external world do it. That's how powerful you are. That's how powerful the internal is over the external. The only way the external can beat you is with the internal's consent and permission. For real. That's the only way it can do it. If you don't do that, then it's not going to work. The external would have to mold itself around your new internal identity, your new conception of reality. There would be a delay. There's always a delay, right? Because our entire lives we've looked outward instead of inward. But that's irrelevant because time doesn't even exist. Time does not exist. It's a sensory perception. It's illusory. That's been proved in loop quantum gravity. That's been proved in pre-Socratic philosophy. That's been proved in time dilation experiences, specifically under intense concentration, flow states, intense exercise regimes, near-death experiences, etc., etc., etc. It does not exist. Time does not exist. Point blank. Period. So any delay that we perceive is just this external world of Maya catching up to our solidified internal state that we've now reclaimed and taken the power back from. That's the only delay. There's not there's not going to be any real incapacity to move toward this delay unless you, I mean, for lack of a better term, unless you yourself get in your own way, unless you revert back to the old programming, back to the previous conditioning, back to those destructive patterns, because it's familiar. And your nervous system doesn't care if you're happy; it cares if you're safe. But are you really safe? No, you're a slave. Do you want to be a safe slave? You're still a slave. Safety or not, you're still a slave. Or do you want to be free? Genuinely free. Like Moses and the Israelites in the desert. They complained again and again and again. At least we have food in Egypt. At least we have water in Egypt. At least there was like some semblance of shelter in Egypt, man. Why'd you bring us out here to die? But you know what? All of the ones that did die, they died free. Every single last one of them died free. They did not die as slaves. They were liberated from their bondage when the Lord brought them up out of Egypt. Had Moses lead them. Every single last one of them died free. They were given that at least. External freedom, but it was only the external freedom as a reflection of their internal freedom, from their liberation from the chains of their own mind. It has more than one meaning. It always has. So when you see that the dead cannot ascribe anything to the living, and that is only the living that allow their power to be seated by the dead, and not only can you reclaim that power back, you can start to redirect it toward your own self, your own inner being. You can say, you know what? For the vast majority of my life, I've let society dictate who I should be. Maybe you've let family dictate who you should be. Parents, maybe they wanted you to go into a certain profession. You did not want to go into that profession. Maybe they wanted you to study something, and you didn't want to study it. That's external. If you let the external define you, every single solitary time, it will. It will do it with no exceptions. It's not going to stop you. It's not going to say, "Oh, are you sure? Like, are you sure? Like, because you actually have the power in this situation. You don't have to do this if you don't want to." No, it's just going to go with it because that's who you already see yourself as. Constantly giving it away, giving it away, giving it away, giving it away. Why would you expect that to be any different? Why would it be any different? It wouldn't be any different. But if you could say, you know what? I understand how I was living previously, but I do not live that. I choose. I actively choose from my mind and from my heart being aligned, the two being aligned on this one thing. Not let this material world dictate who I am as an eternal being, as a child of the Most High God. The Lord has given us an abundance of inheritance. John chapter 10, verse 10. I have I have come so that they may have life and they may have it abundantly. That's our inheritance, not lack. Lack is conditioning. Lack is ego. Lack is looking out there and saying, oh, why can't I have that? Why can't I be like them? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? No, no. You are who you are. You are a child of the living Father. Choose. Choose to live a life of abundance. Act from that standpoint, from that choice, and you will live that life. It is as simple as that. You will live that life. And if at any point it appears that you're not living that life, then once again, you know that that's illusory conditioning because you're looking out there to what? Confirm? You don't need to confirm if you already know the truth. You already know. If you know something to be a fact, do you need external validation for that? If you know, I'm talking you know. You don't think. You don't guess. You 110% know in the fiber of your being that it's a fact. Do you require external validation for that? You do not, because you already have all the internal. You have something greater than external validation. You have internal conviction. Internal conviction is superior to external validation all day long, and it will always be. You have that internal conviction. You have that knowing. Everything else will mold itself around that. I know it sounds crazy. I thought it was a bit out there when I first heard it, but it is true. As much as truth can exist, true for our own souls, not what the world says is true. Remember, that's dead. What do they know of truth? It's a dead world. That doesn't even go together. That doesn't make sense. Straight up. That genuinely does not make any sense. So don't worry about that. Take it as an exercise of mind purification, a mind purification exercise. Whenever it appears that the external world is defining you, whenever it appears that your desires are not there, or you're not going to live the life that you believe you should live, that you know you should live, a life of abundance, a life where your soul's desires are already fulfilled because the Father knows the desires of your heart. If at any point it looks like that is not coming true, that it's false, then you know unequivocally that is previous conditioning via looking at the external for proof. Do not look at the external for proof. You don't need it. You don't require that. You carry that intention. You carry that knowing and that conviction. And you'll see instances, even when you stop thinking about it, instances just come up in this environment, in that environment. It'll not only start to confirm you, but it'll start to really almost work. Well, not almost. It will work for you. Instead of against you, it'll work for you. Because now you've said, no, now I know who's boss. Now I really know what's up. Now I know what's really real. It's who God says I am. It's the power that God gave me. I was giving that power away because I didn't understand. But I had to repent. Metanoia. From the Greek metanoia, I had to change my mind. And from that changing, my mind was purified in the light of the living God. And I was shown who I actually am in His presence, who I actually am in that power. I have that power. You have that power given to us, given to us by the ever living Father. The dead cannot define what cannot die. We we shape the dead to what we see it as. It's not the other way around. It has never been the other way around, and it will never be the other way around. Brothers and sisters, do not let a dead world tell you who you are. Do not let a world that has already passed away dim the eternal light that is you. Not that is in you. For the purpose of this 3D world, it is in us, but it is us. The light that is us. Always remember that. And walk with that remembrance and that gratitude of being able to remember it. And you will see not only how powerful you are, how loved you are, but you will begin to understand that what was once a battle for life will become a dance with it. A dance with life, flowing, an ebb and a flow. And that itself is something of a miracle. God bless each and every one of you. The dead cannot define you. You define it. We are God's children, and our inheritance is abundance. Now let us live according to that inheritance. As always, and forever, remember who you are. God bless.